from relations between Bangladesh and India to the Rohingya crisis to Baul music and philosophy. Cosmos Foundation is always open to new ideas that can help transform society and lead to a better future. And your support along this journey is extremely important to us. So without further delay, let me thank each of you again for enriching the occasion with your presence. And with that, I'd like to hand over to the chairman of the Cosmos Foundation, Mr. Inayatullah Khan, to deliver the opening remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, Shub Prabhat, Zao Chen Hao, and good morning, everybody. Ambassador Zhang Zhou, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, dear friends, I deem it a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome all of you to yet another event of Cosmos Dialogue. This is a series that is dedicated towards deepening our understanding of some key contemporary issues through debate and deliberations, and the propagation of ideas through publications. The dialogue is held under the auspices of Cosmos Foundation, a philanthropic arm of Cosmos Group dedicated to providing strategic insights and policy solutions to help Bangladesh charts its course toward a better future. Our interest covers a broad spectrum of social activities in our civic and political lives, economics, the arts, and the sciences. The Foundation's award-winning work has forged working relationships with institutions of world renown, such as the Smithsonian. In executing the group's corporate social responsibility, it works through a variety of arrangements, often in partnership with specific individuals and institutions and thought leaders and think tanks. It also leverages on the group's media holdings, facilitating critical engagement on the most important issues of the day. Today, we shall be addressing such a topic. It is on Bangladesh-China relations, prognosis for the future. A topic of significance, not only just for our two countries and the region, but also a matter of interest for the world. We will hear on this subject from our chief guest, the distinguished ambassador of China to Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Zhang Zhou. Also from Chinese scholars and media experts, and also from Bangladesh scholars and media specialists, who will be participating as panelists. We were encouraged to hold by the success of such recent symposium on Bangladesh-India relations in collaboration with the Institute of South Asian Studies, ISAS of Singapore, one of the world's foremost think tanks focused on this region. Our event today will be chaired by Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, Principal Research Fellow at ISAS, former Foreign Affairs Advisor in the caretaker government, and a renowned scholar diplomat who had also stewarded the previous seminar on Bangladesh-India relations. We speak at a time when we are witnessing a most remarkable feature of current international politics, which is the rise of China. Obviously, this has varied ramifications of our times, some of which will most certainly be taking place in our deliberations today. The ties of Bengalis with the Chinese peoples are historical, but the former relationship between Bangladesh and China began in October 1975. Since then, we have evolved into what today is an all-weather, time-tested friendship. Beginning with the focus on trade and defense cooperation, our bilateral collaboration has expanded to include political, social, cultural, and maritime sectors. As an entrepreneur myself, and steering the Cosmos Group, I can feel the growing interest and enthusiasm of our Chinese friends and partners, and their increasing desire to invest in sectors like infrastructure, oil and gas, power, water, IT, you name it. Everyone in this room is familiar to some extent, I guess, with China's Belt and Road Concept, or initiative, or simply BRI. It is an idea that seeks to advocate global welfare by a network of connectivity and infrastructure projects with massive doses of investments. President Xi Jinping's historic state visit to Bangladesh in October 2016 resulted in linking Bangladesh to the BRI. It has provided an opportunity to assist us in transforming ourselves into becoming a middle-income country by 2021 and a developed country by 2041. I'm sure BRI will constitute an important focus of our deliberations today. To my mind, a major benefit to us could be China's expressed interest in participating in Bangladesh's blue economy. We are a significant littoral state of the Indian Ocean, and we must develop innovative ways of drawing benefits from the seas in which Chinese experience and support can add great value. I see a happy future in the relationship between Bangladesh and China, and my prognosis is that our mutual trust, especially political trust and friendship, will help us to march together towards the fruition of our common goals and aspirations. Thank you for your attention. Now I would like to request Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry to chair the session.
Many thanks, Anand. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, as chairs I want to do, I will make some remarks, but not until Ambassador Zhang Zhuo has spoken. So I'll give him the floor first for the next 30 minutes. Ambassador, you speak, and then I'll make my inaugural remarks, and we will go on with the panelists' interventions, and discussions will follow. Ambassador.
Dr. Chaudhry, the National University of Singapore and former Foreign Minister of Bangladesh. Inayatullah Khan, Chairman of Cosmos Group, distinguished guests and scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be invited at the opening ceremony of today's seminar under the theme China-Bangladesh relations, Prognosis for the future. As we are approaching the end of the year, I'd like to share a few thoughts with the experts and scholars here about China-Bangladesh relations in the new era. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh is a good neighbor and a good friend to China. In recent years, the development of China-Bangladesh relations has been promoted on the first track. During the successful visit of President Xi Jinping to Bangladesh in October 2016, our bilateral relationship was elevated to strategic partnership of cooperation, which started a new chapter in China-Bangladesh relations. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the current situation and looking into the future, the development of China-Bangladesh relations faces unprecedented opportunities for cooperation. Today, I'd like to put forward some suggestions for deepening the China-Bangladesh strategic partnership of cooperation in the new era. First, to deepen strategic and mutual trust, the next decade will see faster changes in the international landscape and the international alignment of forces, as China and Bangladesh share similar national realities and dreams. In the face of opportunities and challenges, we should join hands to become good partners with equality and mutual trust. We should work together to improve the level of global governance, in spite of the unstoppable rise of emerging markets and developing countries, and the uncertainty and instability facing the world are still permanent. Unilateralism and protectionism are intensifying. Multilateralism and the multilateral trading system are seriously affected. We should uphold the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, resolutely abound the Cold War mentality and power politics, respect the social systems and development paths chosen independently by every nation, respect each other's core interests and major concerns, and take the new road of dialogue without confrontation, partnership instead of alliances. We need to make full use of bilateral and multilateral mechanisms to explore the possibility of China-Bangladesh Plus cooperation, enhance South-South cooperation, and strengthen collaborations within the multilateral framework of the UN Security Council, while abiding by international rules of market standards for the emerging fields of marine, internet, outer-space, nuclear safety, and climate change. All countries should be encouraged to jointly establish new mechanisms and set up new rules. We should form stronger synergies between our development strategies. In March 2018, the UN confirmed that Bangladesh had met the LDC graduation criteria. The dream of Shona Bangla and Vision 2030 are highly in line with the Chinese dream and the 2 centenary goals proposed by President Xi Jinping. Facing the future, China and Bangladesh should take advantage of the situation and seize the real development opportunity as the 2 countries are entering a new era to increase high-level exchanges and lead China-Bangladesh strategic cooperation to a higher level. We should enhance the political position of China-Bangladesh relations and strengthen exchanges in governance, development concepts, and social culture to deepen bilateral cooperation. We can make full use of foreign office consultation, economic and trade ties, maritime cooperation dialogue, consular consultation, and other mechanisms to strengthen macroeconomic policy coordination, to deepen exchanges and mutual learning in theoretical innovation, to build think tank alliances and cooperation network so as to provide intellectual support for opening up new paths of cooperation and development between the 2 countries. Coordination on policies and rules for connectivity is needed. We should place people at the center of cooperation, improve the level of public service, and timely release information on investment environment, industrial cooperation, and country gas. We showed timely studying or amended bilateral treaties and agreements for investment, consular protection, legal assistance, facilitation of personal exchanges, and others, in order to provide favorable conditions for investment and strive to improve people's livelihood and enhance people's well-being. We also need to advance the planning for infrastructure construction, from better synergy on quality and technical assistance, and promote the 3-in-1 connectivity in policy, planning, and standards, so as to create a community of shared interests and responsibility. Second, to deepen economic integration. The next 10 years will be a decade of the transition from the old to new growth drivers in world economy, as well as of profound adjustments and reforms. Both China and Bangladesh have highly prosperous markets that attract businessmen from all over the world. Faced with opportunities and challenges, we should join hands to become good partners of mutual benefit. Third, to deepen innovation and interaction. The next decade will see a new round of technological revolution and a transformation where new things will replace the old ones. China and Bangladesh have complementary advantages and shared interests. In the face of opportunity and challenges, we should work together as good partners for innovation. Fourth, to deepen experience sharing on security. The next decade will see a profound reshaping of the global governance system and the international security situation. China and Bangladesh are neighbors who look out for each other during either safe or disturbing times. In the face of opportunities and challenges, we should work together to be good partners for peace and cooperation. Five, to deepen people and cultural connectivity, the next 10 years will be a decade of deepening cultural diversity and social informatization. China and Bangladesh have been having communications for over 1,000 years. Facing opportunities and challenges, we should join hands to become good partners of inclusiveness and mutual learning. Ladies and gentlemen, while you are experts in related fields, you are welcome to contribute to the development of the future China-Bangladesh relations during this forum. I look forward to your wonderful speeches. Thank you, Tulabat.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'll make some inaugural remarks as chair, and I'll do it from the podium as the others before me. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished friends and participants, we have heard two excellent statements from Prognosis Chairman Inayatullah Khan and Ambassador Zhang Zhuo. Now, these have set the parameters of our discussions today, on the prognosis of the future of Bangladesh-China relations. So I shan't go into the topic proper at this point in time, on which we have a very distinguished panel of Chinese experts and Bangladeshi scholars as well. I shall, however, like to take up my time to share my perceptions on China's behavior on a global matrix. Now, these are extrapolated from my own long years of observation of China in the past, from decades of exposure to multilateral diplomacy. And more recently, I've had the privilege or advantage of a ringside view of China from where I am at this point in time, which is located in Singapore at a think tank in the National University. Now, I believe an understanding of how China relates to the world will better help understand how China relates to individual components of the global state system, Bangladesh included. And all of you around this table, you are thought leaders, and I'm absolutely positive that all of you, in your thoughts, ideas, writings, and speeches, will tend to, in one way or another, shape, fashion, or influence certainly of our own country's relations with the outside world, China included. Now, in China, after the 1949 revolution, a popular song was entitled, and this is in Mandarin, Dongguo Feng, which is the East is Red. Now, it celebrated the ideals of Mao Zedong that ushered in China. For Chinese socialism, Mao remains its most significant frame of reference even to date. But new methodologies to implement them have taken root. Today, the fountainhead from which these flow is President Xi Jinping. At this time when significant actors are also behaving differently from what they have in the past, and we have seen withdrawals from global involvements, a new paradigm by Xi is being offered, and which involves collaborative multilateralism. So, might we be witnessing the rise of a new sun reddening, this time not just the East, but the global horizon? The Chinese tend to reach into the past to shape the present and the future. So philosophically to them, everything in the world has two seemingly competing, opposing elements. In ancient times, the emperor had the task of maintaining a harmonious balance between the two to keep everything running smoothly. With the emperor out of the scene, now the task has devolved on the current authority, which is the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. Now, mathematically, a perfect balance impedes any movement, because that is an equilibrium, impedes any movement in any direction. So there could be a stalemate. At this point, enter the thinker Friedrich Hegel. The Chinese borrowed from his dialectical progression via thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and this provided the kinetic energy for forward movement. The resultant socialism with Chinese characteristics was brought into line with in line with Chinese value systems. So the march to progress and rise began. Some in China see the expression rise as too ambitious. Hence, their preference to call this what we call the rise by the more modest expression, peaceful development. Now, Xi Jinping's motivation is imbued with a sense of nationalism, but one that has a peculiar Chinese strain. His mantra is, again in Mandarin, Zhengguomeng, or China Dream. It broadly comprises three elements, and this is to my perception, by the way. One is a big new power relationship of equality with America. Two, a win-win relationship with partners, and number three, which is domestic, that is boosting demand, stimulating domestic demand. A major fruition of the China Dream is the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. Now, as the implementation process has begun, there have been, as there will be, hiccups along the way. And it is my belief that in our deliberations today, we will address some of these and try to understand that if there are impediments, if any, that lie in the way, and how these impediments could be addressed. While the Chinese themselves do not always like to stress their burgeoning role, the American economist Jeffrey Sachs has called China the most successful development story in history. No surprise, therefore, that China is being positioned pivotally on the globe. To my mind, there are two remarkable patterns in Chinese behavior. One is what the analyst Zhang Weiwei has called the compass approach as a development model. And this is, I think, theoretically something important for all of us to understand. This compass approach points to an intended direction or orientation, but without any explicit blueprint or milestone. In other words, you have a conception, you think ahead, you have a goal, but not necessarily a distinct blueprint to achieve that goal. An example, in some ways, would perhaps be the BRI itself. The second is a sweeping, timeless view of history. China is never in a hurry. It is said that once, when asked about the impact of history, on the Chinese history of the French Revolution, which occurred, by the way, in 1789, Premier Zhou Enlai calmly replied, "It is too soon to tell." I thank you. Okay, so we shall move seamlessly into the panel discussion, and I shall begin by giving the floor to Mr. Wan Zhirong, Chief Journalist of India Bureau of People's Daily. Mr. Wan, you might want to speak from here, or would you like to go to the podium? Okay, then to the podium. Next 15 minutes.
Cosmos Foundation in Han and the Chinese Embassy, Zhangzhou. Everybody, good morning. Thanks for the Cosmos Foundation invitation, and thanks for the organization. So good symposium. My name is Yuan Jinrong. I'm a journalist of the chief, journalist of the India Bureau of the People's Daily. I stayed New Delhi, holding the Bangladesh lots of the times. Today my topic is relationship of Bangladesh and one by one road. My opinion is that one by one road will play more important and active roles of the shaping both countries in the future. As a journalist, I want to share my reporting experience. I have been the thermal power plant last month. I interviewed lots of the workers. One of them, his name is Arthur. He is a 26 years old young guy. And his family is Baku, is very far from the Payang. His family, 12 people, his parents and a young sister and a young brother. And his young brother and his young sister are all at school. So we think the father is the pillar of his family. His parents is a farmer, no land. Not he worked in Payala thermal plant, and he followed the Chinese company 6 years. Not his salary 1 month is about 30,000 taka, and one day 800 taka. Not include not include the overtime the salary. And 6 years ago, we know the father do nothing and know nothing. 6 years, he become the welder. He not just the welder. He is the leader of the welder team. The Chinese company tell me the welder the factor manager 24 workers. It's very professional workers. He just a case, and in Payara thermal power plant, there is about 140 workers of the welder teams. The local workers is about 120. As a professional welder, we know they need a long time of training. And until the last month, and about 20 welder is go out of the company and go abroad because they very professional. So Chinese company tell me this Payala power plant have employed almost 6,000 local people. So Payala power plant is 1,320 megawatt. It's the coal-fired station. It's joint venture, and total investment is $2.4 billion. 20% from Bangladesh, 80% from China. It will be first eco-friendly coal-fired power plant in Bangladesh. It started to build in 2016, and the first unit will be operated on April 30 next year. Now, until last month, 55 of the work have been completed. It will generate 8,000 GWh 1 year if finished. We can see how important to Bangladesh. Currently, 18% of all Bangladesh power stations, including constructing and finish, are from the Chinese company. So we often talk about the one Belt One Road, and talk about the relationship Bangladesh and one Belt One Road. If somebody asks me what is one Belt One Road, what is the relationship of Bangladesh and the relationship, I think it is the first. I think the Bangladesh government is working to formulate its national development plan. It's about talk about its 2020 to the 2040 national plan, and Bangladesh is shifting to the industrialization. Make Bangladesh is a very developed and prosperity country by 2041. Now Bangladesh gradually is shifting the industry. I believe Bangladesh demand as 3I. First I is industrialization. Second is infrastructure. Third is investment. So one Belt One Road can support Bangladesh industrialization. We know Bangladesh have 1.6 billion population. So the government needed first is to create a job. Only the industrialization can provide the job. One Belt One Road can support it. The Chinese economy not transforming from on a fundamentally level. The country is moving away from the low-tech industry to high-tech industry. China is moving away from shifting its surplus industry capacity abroad and looking for the cheap labor and a highly productive economy for long-term investment. A larger population, coupled with the advantageous political position, Bangladesh is a perfect country. Could become prime destination of the Chinese sunset industries, such as the garment and textile industry, construction. And secondly, I think One Belt One Road can support Bangladesh to upgrade infrastructure. I visited the Tongji to Bazar double-tracked railway. It finished in 2006 and reduced the travel time between the Dhaka to Chittagong by at least 1 hour and a half, and promote the national average speed of the train from 60 kilometers per hour to 70 per hour. Trains can run at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour on the track. The numbers of the route jumped from 44 to 84. According to Bangladesh, the Daily Star reporting on November 2017, more than a year after Chinese President Xi's historical Dhaka visit, some of the Bangladesh key development projects have finally gained momentum. Target 12 priority projects involving $9 billion loan in 2018. Politically, Bangladesh can be connected in a corridor between the semi-industrial Southeast Asia countries and the highly populated India subcontinent. Industry needed to develop infrastructure. At the same time, Bangladesh's infrastructure gap is very big. I know I traveled Payala 2 times. First time and by the boat, use the 9 hours, and the second time by the air, use 5 hours. I think maybe just 500 kilometers. So I think the Bangladesh the infrastructure, the gap is big. Bangladesh will have to invest $7 to $10 billion every year until 2020 to upgrade its infrastructure. I have seen lots of the Chinese are constructing some railway bridges such as Padma Railway Link project and the Padma Bridge. We know that the Bangladesh, India, China, and the Myanmar corridor. China wants to use the connective to make in Southeast Asia countries and South Asia countries trade quicker and easier. Recent years, China is increasingly invest Bangladesh infrastructure nearly $10 billion every year. The third, One Belt One Road can support Bangladesh to get wanted investment. We know Bangladesh has sufficient foreign reserve. However, compared its huge development plan, it is limited, needed more FDI. China plans to invest up to $1 trillion in One Belt One Road related project in the next couple of decades. Bangladesh can attract a lot of that investment. We know Chinese President visited in Bangladesh. 27 agreement was signed. One is about $25 billion. This allowed to generate business opportunity in private sectors, such as transportation and logistics, construction, energy. Bangladesh economy have doubled over the last decade, and at the same time Chinese economy expanded. Needed market outside. One Belt One Road needed to integrate with the Bangladesh 2041 development plan. One Belt One Road is offering a historical opportunity for Bangladesh to develop its economy and intensify its integration with the international market. It can stimulate economic growth through the massive infrastructure development, which in turn will enable greater flows of the trade across the borders. Bangladesh can emerge as a regional industrial harbor, as a local and regional industrial supply harbor. Its potential is limitless. But the question is how much opportunity Bangladesh can seize. So my conclusion, One Belt One Road will play a more important and active role of the shaping relationship both countries in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very informative presentation. You give a lot of facts, figures, and numbers. You make significant points with regard to connectivity, as well as, interestingly, for many of our members of our industry would be the relocation idea, that you move from sunset industries, you move from China to Bangladesh. In Southeast, they talk of what they call the flying east paradigm. It's a bit like that, you know, those who progress faster go ahead, and those who come behind gather strength from the power of the wind and then follow suit. So that's called the flying east paradigm. Thank you very much for those ideas and for those facts. I will now move very quickly to the next speaker on my list, which is Professor Hassan Chaudhry, a very familiar face to you all. He is he's at BRAC University and is the coordinator for the Foreign Policy Study Group.
Thank you. A little bit about the foreign policy study group. It came into being last year after the Rohingya crisis. I don't know if somebody could try the next and we realized that most people didn't even know what was going on. They didn't have any idea, any clue about Bangladesh policy, Myanmar policy, and as stuff came out that the Chinese were also involved as one of the major backers. And so lots of confusion about the reaction of the Chinese government, the Indian government, and the Western government. So as somebody who teaches at the university and is also an active journalist, I tried to bring the two groups together. So we started to teach these subjects at the university. So from there it grew, and now we have over 100 members. One of the things we have been able to do is connect ordinary people, because in a society like ours, very hugely hierarchical, we leave the ordinary people out of everything. They are not supposed to have any say in anything. So we have developed a mechanism of interacting and consulting with ordinary people and asking what they think. Ordinary, I'm not sure what it is. They're not like you. and you are extraordinary. And so we bring in that message or that understanding and the perception, and we put it together and present it before you. So the paper that we are presenting today, the slides, is also co-authored by my colleagues at Brack University, and Umna Habiba, research associate, is involved there. She has been very helpful in preparing this. It looks at what is the trend in the foreign policy and how China fits into the foreign policy, as well as how India fits into that. And how those three forces react on us. So the first is, this is going back historically, is that we really don't have independent foreign policies. We don't have strategies. It's dependent, it's defensive. It's trying to protect ourselves from the actions taken by others. And there are two bilateral forces in what we call it. We are subjected to a trilateral position of two neighbors. Somebody? Okay, next. So it's a weak country. We are a weak country, and we have a bilateral relationship. We have sort of bilateral. I think it's kind of false bilateral between China and India. But we have another relationship. The relationship between China and India, which is determining more or less their influence on us. So we have a trilateral relationship. So we call this a new trilaterality, and whether we are able to handle it. Our feeling is that we lack capacity in risk assessment and asymmetric negotiation. We are weak, and we don't have the capacity, or we have not invested enough in capacity in development policies to help us deal in that asymmetricity. One of the reasons I thought this was, I was a member of the Bangladesh Myanmar study group, and as we were visiting Myanmar regularly and discussing with it, it was obvious that the expulsion of the Rohingya was coming. And we were not surprised, but we were shocked at. Not shocked, not really shocked when you were in Bangladesh. You're not shocked by anything in Bangladesh. The lack of preparation we had, given that since 1977, they have been coming, they've been pushed out. So why Bangladesh was not ready? But that's what I mean is the lack of capacity. Okay, the historical references, this trilateralism. Thanks. Is that in 1971 you can see Bangladesh was dealing with India and Pakistan. And then they had their own trilateral relationships. And India had USSR on one side and USA and China on the other. And then Bangladesh, from 1972 to 2008, it was India and the West. I'm saying 2008 because I was visiting Sador in the United States, and I saw the Western economics crash in 2008 and how the on talk shows the Americans were screaming, we have to have China with us. And that was the point when America began to become much less stronger than it was historically before. So 2008 regime has been the decline of the Western part of China. Right now it is a very strong position. What does trilaterality mean for us? It means Bangladesh into India, Bangladesh into China, and then India, China into Bangladesh. So we are not really free from even the relationship between the two big powers. Yes. Okay, so this is the South Asian triangle. I see three main, I don't see, the group sees three major trends. We see one is that Maldives, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have the India-China trilaterality, which in these two countries matter most, and they are the ones who are more or less decide what's going to happen. As you can see, even in internal policy, particularly Maldives, Sri Lanka. Maldives is fascinating, but I'm following that story. India has got US and China. India is in a strong position. It can deal with both, and I think the trade war has brought China and India a little closer over the Iranian oil. And then we have Pakistan, which has got the West on one side and China on the other. But again, those countries also have their own positions about dealing with their enemy, if you will. And I think Pakistan benefits a lot from this enmity with India. Next one, please. And so hostile relationship. So the Indo-Pak relationship is historically hostile. As a history teacher, I can trace it down to a very ancient history and show that North Indian conflicts determine more or less what we understand as India. India is North Indian issues. So the margins of India do not figure in India. And while the Indo-Chinese conflict is evolving, but it's fascinating. If you read, I don't know whether you read the Indian media, I I read the global media all the time. And India is rightly about China. I think the last one was about their Bhutan policy. Why China is sending so many rich tourists to Bhutan? Bhutan looks nice, I suppose. But the anxieties are all over, and that's determining their relationship and its influence on us. So, what is the political strategy for us? Okay, regional multilateralism. SARC is more or less over. One of the reasons, of course, is the Indo-Pak hostility. Nobody wants to believe or want to be in SARC, which is perceived as being a dominator. And India is seen as a big one. So China as new South Asian neighbor. This is something I've been pushing. China is a neighbor, though China is not contiguous to every country, but China is a neighbor in every sense of the term. That's really positive for China. And it is contiguous, land contiguous to 4 countries. And with the ocean rim contributing to the rest. Even perhaps with us, when we got the 2 submarines, Chinese were very, the Indians were very unhappy because we got Chinese competitors. So it was like buying the 9 MiG planes by Bangladesh. And I read this question, whom are they going to fight with this plane? If it's India, but those 9 slightly damaged Russian MiGs were in India for repair. So I couldn't figure out which one they wanted to fight. But that's how it is. Neither China nor India are perceived as intrinsic neighbors in South Asia. This is something I think both China and India are very blind to. They are not particularly liked. They are seen as those who are using these countries, smaller countries, for their own benefit. And I think that's how it should be. We don't love you, you don't love us. And that's a wonderful way of handling any relationship. And we country in our strategy for all these is balancing India and China. And we are not very good at it. Political strategy. Yes, political strategy. We have problems with India, which is water sharing. We have relationship, which is border trade. We have problems with immigrants. And a major one is Northeast insurgency. Now it's very interesting, when I posted this on my Facebook yesterday, I had more queries from my friends in the northeast of India saying, hey Afghan, what are you going to talk about? We seem to forget that northeast is of India, and a little bit of northeast that we have here is such an important part of any foreign policy formulation. And their interest is not the same interest as Delhi. Northeast interest in Bangladesh is not the same interest as, let's say, Dhaka. And of course, China has its own problems, but in Myanmar, there is this northeastern, what we call the unresolved part of the margin. The margin is an important part, but we seem to ignore the role of margin in history. And I see that because I'm writing a book on Sheikh Mujib, and I see how margin plays such an important role. When the margin rises, margin has got more capacity to negotiate, but it is big time in politics, margin seems to be missing. Okay, the Rohingya factor and relations with China. This has now become the dominating aspect as far as the Chinese are concerned, because it is perceived as very negative. China has lost more credibility in a country where China was well congested even 1.5 years back as a balancer with India, and now it's not a popular country. Okay, the economic aspects. China has high Chinese investment, and I think Rick pointed out that how high it is and how big it is. Transforming Chinese money into public benefit, not perceived. This is very important. We talk to people and ask, well, look, China is investing here, China is investing there, China is coming in with millions and billions. The perception, China makes money with the rich people. China is friend of the rich. And Chinese problem, it's not my problem. This is what people think. Because the investments in infrastructure, investments in power plants, investments in everywhere, enriches in a country like ours, which is basically dominated by network capitalism, to the network. It is not perceived as beneficial. India gains in that, but I'll come to that very quickly. China, close to economic segment of the ruling class. The Dhaka Stock Exchange crisis was something I was following, I was writing on as a journalist. It was fascinating how the business community was supporting China and the bureaucracy was supporting India. But you don't know how it ended in the Dhaka Stock Exchange. Ultimately, Security and Exchange Commission said, no, China gets it. When, before that, the Indians were telling me, no, we've got the government on our side. We will get it. So you can see the business lobby in Bangladesh matters, and Chinese are close to the business logic. Some anxiety of Chinese plans is overwhelming. I mean, yeah, it is the Chinese dream, it is great. But people no longer think China is about to change the world for the good of the world. People no longer believe that. I think that kind of a statement worked even during the Cold War. Doesn't work now, as most countries have kind of grown out of that thing. If you're doing this, it's probably benefiting you. If we also benefit from it, it's fine. But don't say you're trying to improve the world. Say you're trying to improve yourself and you want us as partners. But let's have a negotiation. I think the feeling is we are not negotiating. But one of the reasons we don't have this feeling we are not negotiating is that large idea that we are not really capacitated to negotiate. I think if you look at Myanmar issue, that thing will not go. Next one, Bangladesh in terms of China-India relationship. Going back to what is basically my point, is that you cannot have an independent foreign policy when you in trilateral situations. One is informal trade with India, including remittances. It's very huge, it's very big. A lot of people in India sending money, a lot of money going from here. It's not happening with China. So the relationship is mostly at the official level, at the top level, at the higher level. Formal economic relationship. Most of the economic relationship with China is signed. The president coming and saying 20 billion, 30 billion, 40 billion, etc., etc. I have the data on that. But with India, it's informal economy. So India has an upper hand in that. Informal multi-class relations with India. One of the facts which we realized, I should have noticed, is why is it that people will always, even if they are not liking India, be close? Is medical benefits for the middle class and the lower class. Bangladesh doesn't have great medical services. If you're sick, you're going to go to India. You cannot go to China. So there is a huge stake of people in being more, even reluctantly, India friendly, because they need India. They do not see themselves as needing China. I myself should visit India for that health check. Ruling class relationship within China, India's role in local politics. If you were here at the last seminar, you would see how people became very emotional about India's role in elections. And I have written about why it's possible that China doesn't want to get involved in local politics. A lot of people, particularly from the opposition group, were calling me up and said, don't you think that China should now step in to support BNP? And why would China do that? But the idea is that India and China, they are fighting each other. They must also come and fight the army BNP fight. And I think one of the reasons China would not be interested in China would have to answer a few questions about the Rohingya crisis. And I don't think China would want to do that. Transit for India, Northeast is a major issue, and denial, which Bangladesh government has very solidly played around with, is denying support to the insurgents in the Northeast. It has got a great deal, it has gone down well. My friends in the Indian foreign policy research institutions say that brilliant. Previous governments tried to use it, and I think I used to work for the UN in 1990s, and I was part of the Myanmar, not Myanmar, the Rohingya intrusion in 1992, and Bangladesh was openly supporting insurgency groups. Now, no question about supporting insurgency groups, and Bangladesh has got positive dividends on this. So insurgents insurrections are over, and Bangladesh has gained. It has left positive impact on Bangladesh as far as India is concerned. China, as a major arms supplier to Bangladesh, of course, has got another finger in the power cluster. But again, for China, what is it going to do with the Rohingyas, which are becoming a bigger issue? Okay. Do you have time left?
Yes. Yeah.
No. Last bit. China backing Myanmar in Rohingya issue is something China will need to explain. You can get around with sophisticated analysis the public perception is that you have supported ethnic cleansing. And China will have to deal with that. It's not my problem. But China may wait for good news if, as far as Chinese are concerned, if the Indians push out the Assamese immigrants. Whereupon then China can say, we are not the only one helping others push out people. India is also doing it. So that will balance both China and India as people pushing in. But the problem is this. When I talk to the foreign ministry, they get very angry about this. Why were you not ready if they have been coming here regularly since 1977? India, Bangladesh cannot deal with it. Why it can't deal with it, I have no idea. And somebody has to say. And all kinds of statements are made. But the point is, it's something which is open, and if you've been to Myanmar, you've seen how racist they can be. I have been racially abused only in 2 countries. And I've been to most countries of the world. It is in Myanmar and in Canada, where I used to live for about 5 years. So clearly, it's something which is very deep in them. If it is deep in them, and if by that everyone is deep, we are fucking deep racists. The point is, if it means we're going to push out so many number of people into another country, why were we doing this? Now, here is my editor, Zafar Sulban, where he mentioned in a chat we are having on TV that one of the reasons we couldn't do it is because we're vulnerable to bombing of Chittagong. And this was confirmed to me by some of my sources that yes, this is vulnerable. So Bangladesh does not have air power if the Myanmar government decides to bomb Chittagong. So therefore, in 1977, some army officers who were posted in the area said, we sought permission to go and enter as a defensive retaliation against the refugees, but we were not given permission. I think we don't have a policy as to how to deal with this situation. That I think is a major problem for us. So Bangladesh is more into reacting rather than anticipating. We just don't know what's going to happen next. We are just waiting for it to happen, and then we will cobble together some statements. The weak market transparency in Bangladesh, vulnerable to Indo-China rivalry, which means that the money making here is so non-transparent, which can translate into several euphemisms. It basically means that we do not have control over policy making. And Bangladesh has not yet presented a strategy to deal with trilateralism. We don't really know how to deal with it. So we have India on one side, we have China on one side, India and China having their own fights, and I think they are coming closer together. But as far as Bangladesh is concerned, Bangladesh doesn't really know how it's going to deal with the future because it doesn't conceptualize the future. It's waiting for the future to be conceptualized with others. And that I think is a major problem. So China should take advantage of our lack of understanding of our own future, our lack of understanding or our lack of directions, and carry on accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanchari, for the very interesting comments. The possibilities of how a weaker player in the global system, or a smaller player, but Bangladesh, of course, not small, it's the 8th largest country in the world. One talks about 3 scenarios which a weaker, smaller neighbor can react to the circumstances. One is the way Finland behaved to the Soviet Union during the Cold War era. There's a Scandinavian analyst called Erling Björk who speaks of pirate fish behavior. You tack close to the shark in order not to be eaten. So this is one way you can do it. The other is you sort of draw upon extra regional linkages to strengthen yourself in order to make up for the power gap with the stronger adversary in the region, which is the kind of policy that Pakistan followed during the Sito-Cento days, linking up with the United States and others, the West, in order to make up for the power gap with India. The third is, you build up your own capabilities. I mean, you stop being, you may be small, but you stop being weak. And you stand on your own and build up a kind of deterrence that would enable you to inflict a bloody blows on a potential adversary. The kind of policy that Singapore, for instance, follows. small but strong, powerful, and nimble. And the second thing, Professor, when in Singapore, I sometimes follow some of your ideas, but you talk about some kind of a dichotomized understanding, as if it were, between India and China. That China does business and India does security. Emphasis is on, is that what you're saying?
In case of Bangladesh,
Yeah.
China is more into business.
More into business.
And India is
More into security, and therefore there is a kind of a tacit, there can be a tacit
I think at this moment there is a
understanding.
tacit.
Very good. All right, you make those 2 points, and of course, finally, the Rohingya issue, and I would assume that there would be interventions from the floor on that. So with those, I now move to the next speaker, which is Professor Li Chao. She is the Executive Director of the Institute of South Asian Studies of Sichuan University, Institute of South Asian Studies, incidentally, ISAS, which is the same acronym as my institute, which just means that great people think alike. So, Professor?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Respected Ambassador Zhang, Chairman Ayatollah Han, Dr. Chaudhry, Mr. Yuan, Professor Hassan Chaudhry, Professor An, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Suprabhat, Assalamu alaikum. My title is the development of the China-Bangladesh relationship under the Belt and Road Initiative. My speak will be four sections, mainly the background, advantage, challenge, and some suggestions. You must similar this with this map, the route of BRI connected east to west. And this is chronology of BRI. In the 2013, President Xi Jinping first proposed the State Road Economic Belt, and next, by the end of this against 103 countries and international organizations have signed 113 agreements with China under the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, I like to talk advantage for the China-Bangladesh cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative. First, the non-standing trade relation between China and Bangladesh has laid the foundation of the bilateral cooperation. Since the Han days, Bangladesh was the way for the Southern Silk Road, where the start point of the South Silk Road is today's Chengdu Play, the city where our Sichuan University is located. Faxian, Xuanzang, and other eminent monks have visited Bangladesh in different dynamics. In 1038, Bangladesh eliminated monk Atisa went to Tibet to spread Buddhism. He passed away there. Every Tibetan know him. I was a child. I love him. I respect him very much. This time I know his hometown in Bangladesh. I'm very proud of this. And Zheng He, the great Chinese navigator of Ming Dailies, visited Bangladesh many times. Since the establishment of diplomatic relation between China and Bangladesh in the 1975, bilateral relations have developed healthy. Bangladesh has always supported Chinese position in human rights, Taiwan and Tibetan issue. In 2005, China and Bangladesh established a comprehensive partnership, and 2008 in closer comprehensive partnership. And in the 2016, China and Bangladesh established the strategic partner. Bangladesh has always kept high price and support the BRI and BCIA. During President Xi Jinping visited Bangladesh in 2016, China and Bangladesh signed 27 agreements and memorandums in understanding covering every field. The second, Bangladesh has an important geopolitical strategic position in the BRI. Bangladesh is an important pivot of BRI. Geographic, Bangladesh is a neighbor country close to China, connected South Asia and Southeast Asia. Is an important intersection of BRI. It is also an important bridge in China's southwest border connected Indian Ocean. Bangladesh is also a convergence point of Chinese economic cycle, South Asia cycle, and Asian economic cycle. In the background of the implementation of the Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States, the strategic importance of the East Indian Ocean is constantly emerging, like the professor mentioned. The Bay of the Bengal in the northern part of the East Indian Ocean is the largest by the world and an important part of the Indian Ocean ship road. It is also important for the safety in the offshore energy line. Third, similar development concepts of the two countries in the core of cooperation. China and Bangladesh are both popular and developing countries. The national conditions are similar, and the development goals are in line with each other. The Chinese people pursuit of the Chinese dream of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is harmony with the dream of the people of Bangladesh to become strong and propose as demonstrated by the dream of golden Bangladesh. Fourth, China-Bangladesh economic and trade cooperation has great potential. Bangladesh has enjoyed a good economic development in recent years. Bangladesh has maintained a GDP growth rate of more than 6% for 12 years, reached 7.28% in last fiscal year, and is one of the faster growing developed countries in South Asia, in the world and the world. By the end of December 2017, Bangladesh foreign exchange reserve amounted to 32 billion US dollar. Second only to India. Bangladesh may become next light industry manufacturing center. Bangladesh continues promoting trade, liberalization, and investment facilitation. In recent years, it established a special economic zone and export extreme zone, and has participated in many bilateral trade negotiation and regional cooperation. The facts, Bangladesh has a great advantage in population and resource. Bangladesh is the 8th most populous country in the world. It is estimated that demographic dividend will last until 2038. Meanwhile, China's population is 8. Since the implementation of BRR, China and Bangladesh has achieved remarkable results. Bangladesh is one of the first countries in the South Asia to support the BRI. It is also an active supporter and participant in the construction and the economic corridor of BCIN. Bilateral trade between China and Bangladesh has grown rapidly. Bilateral trade value have surpassed the $10 billion mark since 2013. And look at that, it rises very fast. Bangladesh has become China's third largest trade partner in South Asia. The direct investment between China and Bangladesh has greatly expanded. At the end of 2014, Chinese stock of the direct investment in Bangladesh reached $116 billion. China-Bangladesh culture and education cooperation has been continued strengthening. By the 2014, 428 Bangladesh scholarship students have gone to China to study. And now we talk about 16.2, challenging to the further development of bilateral relations. First, the constraints imposed by the big power should be regulated. You know, the American and Japan are the main donor of Bangladesh. Maybe many competition between the big power will have an important impact of the future development of the China-Bangladesh relation. Second, the Bangladesh political stability and policy continue the further confrontation between political party resulted in the instability of Bangladesh's policy and also make Bangladesh's policy unpredictable. Third, corruption and administrative affection. Fourth, although government has taken many measures to combat corruption, there are still many loopholes pose the risk of investors. Fourth, establish of social and economic development environment. Frequent demonstration and strike are not conducive to the health development of Bangladesh economy. And fifth, lack of the infrastructure and energy. It's not in Bangladesh are not useful to the cooperation between two countries. Now we give some suggestion on promoting the development of China and the Bangladesh relationship. I just my suggestion focused on the 5 connectivities, including these 5 connectivities. First, strengthen policy coordination between the two sides. We should strengthen cooperation between two governments and at the same time focus on the strengthen inter-party exchange. We should strengthen intergovernmental cooperation and promoting more cities in the two countries to include friendly cities. Second, facilities connectivity. We need to strengthen cooperation in infrastructure construction because the two countries continue to promoting the construction of the Bangladesh, China, India, and Myanmar economic grade, especially in the construction of transnation road and transport road. Chinese fund enterprise should be encouraged to invest in the construction of road, bridge, port, and airport of Bangladesh, as well as in energy development in Bangladesh. And third, unimpeded trade. Take the BRI as an opportunity to expand the common interest of the China and Bangladesh and effectively reduce the trade deficit. We should actively promoting the feasibility study of the China and Bangladesh free trade area. This is very important. You know, at present, Chinese competitive advantage in steel, non-ferrous metal, building material, rubber, electric power, chemical industry, automobile, communication, construction, machinery, aerospace, ship, and marine engines will hardly impact Bangladesh because Bangladesh is in industry base is most low and need a large number of import and attractions and foreign investment. Due to this rising number cost, it is also difficult for Chinese homogeneous clothes products to impact Bangladesh. The China-Bangladesh free trade agreement, on the one hand, can effectively alleviate the bilateral trade deficit between Bangladesh and China. And fourth, integration. And fourth, in terms of financial integration. Chinese investment in Bangladesh should promote the localization of project, dark look number, and employment rates truly benefit both sides and earnestly increase local income. Fifth, in the area of people-to-people bond, we should strengthen exchange in the personal video cooperation in the higher education and mutual recognition of academic qualification. In recent years, Chinese-Bangladesh cultural exchange have developed rapidly, but they mainly focus on the high level and intergovernmental cultural exchange. The non-government exchange needed to be strengthened. Like this time, Cosmo organized this conference is very good, I think. In the past, the cultural exchange between Yunnan province of China and Bangladesh are very frequent, but cooperation with other regions are far less than this. Taking the Sichuan province as an example, our institute, the Institute of South Asia Study of South Sichuan University, has been organizing a short course program for South Asia study for BRI. I have established cooperation with famous universities in the South Asia, for example, Tribhuvan University in Nepal, JNU in India, and Kabul University in Afghanistan, and other countries, but has yet worked with Bangladesh. So this time, I hope we also establish cooperation with your university, like Dhaka University, other university, and cooperation do many things. Welcome, we deeply cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Now we are into BRI itself, the core of the discussions in many ways, I think, the Belt and Road Initiative. Living in Singapore as I do, I mean, as you know, Singapore is an intensely capitalist country, and yet the position on the BRI, and here I have a quote from Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister, and he says, it's a win-win situation linking countries around the region with infrastructural projects. In a way, it enables the region to benefit from China's prosperity, but at the same time to maintain the region's links with the rest of the world. And Singapore, as you know, has profited enormously from this being a financial hub. At our ISAS, we follow, and I certainly do myself, the BRI projects around many parts of the world. Certainly Pakistan, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the biggest BRI project, set of projects in the region. Kazakhstan, which is a landlocked country, and which has BRI projects in the form of dry ports, Khorgos, for instance. Then Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Malaysia. We all know that there is also a flip side of the coin in this, and this comes to the fore when in any discussion on BRI. The indebtedness, the possibility that your debts might rise, the kind of problem that Sri Lanka had to contend with and hand over Hambantota, for instance, for a 99-year lease. Now, those are the downsides. At the same time, we know that this is a new form of development cooperation. Those of us who have been involved with governance in the earlier years have had a development cooperation experience which are largely Western-based. We know the norms, we know the way those take place. Here we are exposed to a new paradigm, a new kind of development cooperation, and there will be teething problems, but we are studying these very closely in order to circumvent the problems and effect what Professor has called the win-win cooperation. I shall now move to Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, very distinguished academic, Department of International Relations, founder director of the Center for Genocide Studies, University of Dhaka, with whom I have myself worked very closely in the past. We have a book with the publishers on China in South Asia and South Asia in China, a compendium of pieces, articles on both by Chinese and the Bangladeshi sides, which he and I are cooperating. Professor, you can speak for here, of course.
Thank you very much. No, I don't have any PowerPoint. I'm a powerless, pointless person. So I thought, I want to see faces. So it's far better to see faces from here. Thank you very much, the Chair, Tekab Bhai. Thank you very much, the Cosmos head, and my co-panelists. The ambassador is missing for a while.
No, only temporarily.
Temporarily, I believe. And but friends out there. I don't have a formal presentation. My response is mainly listening to three excellent speakers, and not to mention also the first two interventions by the chair and the host, and then of course also the ambassador. Let me flag 7 or 8 things, and that will clarify my position on this whole issue of China-Bangladesh relations. First one is, for the first time, Bangladesh has a consensus when it comes to China. We never had this consensus. Particularly with Xi Jinping's visit and our Prime Minister's move towards China, we have a consensus between all the major political parties when it comes to having a relationship with China. This was not there. Earlier there was a tilt on one side or the other, but today as we speak, we have a consensus. And that, I think, is an interesting development. So there are critics who say that we don't have a strategy. I would differ on that, and this is mainly because Bengalis or the South Asians are...
Chaudhary is not here also.
Yeah, well, he's also not here anyway, but I'm sure he'll I know him for many years. The reason we don't have this because Bengalis, well, the whole South Asians, we are oral people, we are not textual people. So you don't see in text, but there are things that gets carried out, and I would say the first thing that we have to flag is that we have a consensus when it comes to foreign policy, particularly vis-a-vis China. Number 2, people have talked about rise of China. One has to be very careful. It's the rise of China. It's not rise of China. In 18th century, China was the largest economy in the world. They lost out only 200 years, and the reasons for that. And in 18th century, undivided India, and I want to emphasize the word undivided India was the second largest economy in the world, and in that undivided India, Bengal was the largest and the richest province. If not the largest, the richest province in 18th century. So the Bengal that you see is not the only Bengal. The Bengal is old. Bangladesh is part of an older civilization, much older civilization. People forget that. So I will differ with this concept of weak Bangladesh. You know, one should not look into the weakness in terms of economics. If you look at the social capital, the symbolic capital, there are X number of other ways of looking at it, I would say it's a very rich country. Not to mention, it's the 8th largest country in the world. We have more Bangladeshis than Russians in this world. So keep this perspective in mind. So it's not a big country or a small country or a little country. One has to get out of it, and I'll come back to that at the very end. Number 3, people have talked about India, and people have talked about conflict of India, but keep in mind, as we speak, India's largest trading partner single country trading partner is China. Keep that in mind. Not to mention this year, more Indian students went to China than to UK. And this is a significant development. Now you can talk about that it is cheaper to go to China, you can bring all those things, but the fact remains more Indian students have gone to China this year than to UK. And I'm telling you, in 10 years' time, there will be more Indian speaking Chinese or Chinese speaking Indians than probably English speaking in 10 years' time with the way the things are going. One also has to keep in mind that when it comes to China, there are differences of opinion within India. We have talked about India in a very realist, paradigm, and I'm always having critical of that. Because if you talk to the business people in India, they are very open to China. They have to be, because as China is the largest trading partner. I remember last year in Agartala when they had this 20 years BIMSTEC conference, and they invited me to give the keynote paper. And I was, quite surprised. Why me? And, the host was saying, you say your mind. So I was a bit, careful in talking about China. But I remember the conference was organized by the Indian Chambers based in Calcutta. The president, or former president, Mr. Roy, who spoke after me, he came with an open statement saying, India should be a member of One Belt, One Road. Full stop. So, the very thing that we think that India-China conflict, please get into underneath of this realist paradigm, and you will see there are far more complexities involved here. Yes, the bureaucrats, I believe, are lagging behind, but the politicians and the business people have reached to China in a way, and there are reasons for keeping that conflict in appearance. There are good reasons for that. I don't want to speak on that. There are good reasons for it, but anyone familiar with diplomacy or international negotiation will understand why, that phase is also required for India's interest. Somebody referred to SARC. I think it's high time to reinvent SARC. It's important that SARC becomes SARC plus 2 or SARC plus 3, as ASEAN has done. And there's no reason why China should not be made into a full member of SARC, given the fact that all the countries of SARC, the largest trading partner is not the development partner. All the countries, largest trading partner is China. China literally is already economically a South Asian country. If you take the development partner, almost I can see save Bhutan and save India. I believe China would be the largest development partner of all the South Asian countries. So it's economically, literally, is a South Asian country. So SARC should come with an idea of SARC plus 3, I'm sure Japan and the United States will also be interested to become members. So one has to reinvent SARC. Now it's also very interesting, because people say that India and Pakistan can't work together, and that's the reason of SARC. I'm a bit hesitant on that. Because in Shanghai Cooperation, you do see India and Pakistan both being members there and working there. So why they can land up in Shanghai and why can't they land up in one of the South Asian countries? It has to do more with domestic politics, how you win elections and all those things. I don't want to go into details of this part of it, but one has to be very careful. It's not just India-Pakistan conflict as such, because India and Pakistan are together when it comes to Shanghai Cooperation and particularly in relation to China. One Belt, One Road. Series of speakers have talked about it. Critics have already referred to it as this is the new Marshall Plan that we have. Probably yes. But here one has to keep in mind, and I heard Dr. Giron talked about 3 I's, which I thought was remarkable: industrialization, infrastructure, and investment. Keep in mind, when Marshall Plan was, worked out, Europe had a literacy rate of over 94%. Keep that in mind. You cannot push an infrastructure development unless you have a human capital. And in Europe, the human capital was already there. So it's important that China, as it levels into industrialization, infrastructure, investment, and I see that Professor Li Chao did talk about education as number 5. I think it should be made into 2 or 3. It is important that whole of South Asia, including Bangladesh, becomes 100% literate if they want to take advantage of One Belt, One Road. There is no other way Bangladesh can take advantage of One Belt unless the entire population gets literate. And it's possible because of the technology that we have. There's no reason why in 10 years' time, whole Bangladesh can't be literate. And I would, request my Chinese colleagues here to literally think about an investment, a serious investment on education, because that is going to change the scenario of what Bangladesh is all about, particularly in relation to One Belt, One Road. Because it is important to look into social capital, or people who are familiar with symbolic capital also, that you can't throw it away. That's what drives the economy and reproduces a country. So from that point of view, this people-to-people relationship that Professor Li Chao talked about is something I think should be flagged at a higher level and not down number 5. Number 5, if I talked about the foreign policy approach and did talk about Hegel, we have to be very careful here. Chinese dialectics is qualitatively different from Hegelian dialectics. Chinese dialectics never go for thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Well, even Hegel did not go for that. Hegel in his 18 volumes never wrote thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This was the critics who made Hegel, almost reinvented Hegel by saying thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But the point is, this is what the Western dialectics is all about. Chinese dialectics, they don't go for synthesis. It's always yin and yang, tongbian, balancing the opposites. In fact, I did refer to that. You balance the opposite. Others to recognize Taiwan. But as we speak, Taiwan's largest investment is in mainland China. How they do it, we don't understand. Just think about Indian Pakistan doing something of that kind. Impossible. But the Chinese can do it. It's amazing. You go to Taipei, you roam around, there are all Chinese tourists, you buy souvenirs and you put it upside down and say made in China. It's not been made in Taiwan. Economically, Taiwan is already a China's country. I think it will remain only time when politically it will also become what I believe Beijing wishes to. So in terms of dialectics, I think what we have created, and this is particularly Deng Xiaoping, a capi-communism country. They've almost brought 2 conflicting domains, capitalism and communism, together. Well, Singapore, is also a capi-communist city-state. Don't forget, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was also a member of the Communist Party. People forget that. He also comes from the same tradition. And it was Mr. Lee, actually, when Deng Xiaoping visited Singapore. He visited, few countries when he came to power, and one of the countries was Singapore. Mr. Lee was quite surprised that Mr. Deng came to Singapore. Now, at that time, Singapore was pretty high in terms of economic development. When Mr. Deng Xiaoping said to Mr. Lee that, what you have done to Singapore, if I could do to the China, keep in mind, where China will go. Mr. Liu, and this I heard from his, absolutely from him, in one of the Shangri-La dialogue when Mr. Lee was alive. Mr. Lee said, how can you do that? Singapore is just a city-state. He said, no, there is a similarity. 100% of land in Singapore is state land, 100% of land in China is state land. 80% of the housing that you do, or 85% of the housing that you do in Singapore is government housing. 85% of housing we do in China. So it's similar. And look how China lived to the point, Singapore is now almost learning of how China, the remarkable development in history. So the point of this dialectics is important. Because South Asians, we don't work with dialectics. We work, and this is the problem, we work, and I have referred to it earlier in one or two papers, the food that we eat, love most, this is the biryani. I don't know whether you're familiar with biryani. This is the biryani. When you have everything. You have the meat, you have the fruits, you have the rice. It is a Persian food. The word biryani means roasted rice. People say it was Akbar who got it to South Asia. The potato came later when biryani came to Bengal. And I tell my students that in the future, in the biryani, you will also get a mobile phone. We just have to wait for that. So it has everything, but you need to be an excellent chef. The biryani, nobody, it's not everybody just putting those things will become biryani. And that's precisely the reason biryani is known by the chef. Hadi biryani or Fakhruddin biryani, all the places, Lucknow biryani, Hyderabadi biryani, is very critical. Now in foreign policy, to make the biryani approach, our Prime Minister tried to do that actually with Manmohan Singh. If you look, when Manmohan Singh was there and the visit and the 40 clause, if I remember, 40 clause agreement, it had everything. It also had Rabindranath Tagore's birthday in that. Now why that could be there, nobody knows, but everything was there. But something was there, which really, or something was not there, which really made things, go at one point and stop. And that the soul was not there, Mamata was not there. Since Mamata was not there, the Tista was stopped. So the point here is you need to have an excellent chef to make biryani, but that's what we do. Chinese, on the other hand, they're not interested in that. They're interested case by case. If the politics doesn't go economic, if the economics doesn't go culture, if the culture doesn't go, send people diplomacy, send people. Let something go. So that is something that we need to learn and try to see how we can reinvent our foreign policy. The last 3 points, the Rohingya issue. The Chinese have to learn, or they have to be informed that this is different from the 70s and the 90s. And this is not, and I want to say very, with full force, this is not a Bangladesh Myanmar issue. This time. Because this time, there is clear evidence that a genocide or crime against humanity or war crime has happened. This was not the case in the 70s and 90s. And when a genocide happens, when a crime against humanity happens and a war crime happens, it doesn't remain a bilateral issue. That is the problem. So it is no longer a bilateral issue. Not to mention that Rohingyas are not only in Bangladesh. Yes, we have the largest number of Rohingyas. My Rohingya friends are saying, and we're working on it, there are 26 countries where they have Rohingyas. Well, Rohingyas are definitely in Middle Eastern countries, in Pakistan, in India, in Thailand, in Japan, in Australia, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and I can go on and on. So it's not only, it's our problem, no doubt, that we have the largest 1.1 million, and people forget that this 1.1 million, of the 750,000 that came, literally we have a Bhutan in 3 months inside Bangladesh. We have a Bhutan inside Bangladesh in 3 months, whereas Bhutan took 50,000 years to become Bhutan. Keep that perspective in mind. So when people say, oh, there is a killing here and there, definitely in Bhutan there is a killing here and there. But one has to appreciate that the partnership, particularly with UN NGO, the way it has worked in Bangladesh is remarkable. It's something to learn. Because a Bhutan inside Bangladesh, and since my university, we map the violence, my center particularly, we map the violence of 26 categories, including the violence in Rohingya. You will be amazed, I will tell you, it's much safer than New York. It's much safer than New York. So those who are critical of this issue of, of Rohingya in Bangladesh and that it is a bilateral issue, etc., we have to keep the bigger perspective in mind. Now here, it is important that this time, since a genocide has taken place, and I want to bring West here, the Western countries do not go by dialectics. They're immensely positivist. Positivism is a hegemonic discourse, a philosophical discourse of the Western thinking for last, I would imagine, 1,000 years, if not more. They have always been positivists. And since they are positivists, they will keep on, digging the grave, one by one. Keep in mind how Nixon got out. Nixon, not even, the verdict came out, but they kept on digging and digging to the point that Nixon said, okay, I want to resign. They are not going to leave this out on the Rohingya issue. Even if there is 100% repatriation, 100% repatriation in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years term, I'm telling you honestly, the West, all the intellectuals, the scholars who have built this international legal instruments over the years, keep in mind in the 70s and the 90s, the international legal instruments were not there. ICC was not there. Not to mention rape as a genocidal item was not there. So these are international legal instruments. Not to mention, you also did not have, I forget the legal, this is the one on the protection. That was also not there. Right, that was also not there. So these legal instruments are 70s and 90s not there. Since all these people have worked hard for years, and the global consensus has been created, and now that we have an ICC, and as we have seen, the ICC has already given the verdict that yes, whatever has been done in Myanmar, though they are not a member of ICC, still the ICC has a mandate of starting the trial. And this is going to start the trial. My foreign secretary informed me maybe because of the election they're taking some time, but right after the election, they definitely will be visiting Bangladesh. Two other things I will stop. Somebody talked about submarines. It is important to understand that that is the only way. The Bay of Bengal territory that has now been sanctified or made perfect. This is the cheapest way the Navy could do. It's not only conflict. Also, you have to remember we have piracy as a serious problem. Yes, there were critiques in our neighboring countries about two submarines, and I think our Prime Minister responded very correctly. She said, okay, they're worried, let us purchase two more. So two more are coming, and they'll be stopped shortly. One has to keep in mind that this is the 8th largest country in the world. Not to have submarines, not to have a powerful kind of a military is unthinkable. Not to even have an 8th largest intelligence is also unthinkable. Yes, it started in 71, rerolling a little bit, but since it's an old civilization, since we have been here for thousands of years, one has to get used to this idea that you can't treat this country from 71. This is a country which has a longer history and a longer sense of where this country will go. And I will stop with the last one. And this I said because somebody has come back to give a sense. There are two big theories. You can bring all theories, I'm talking about social science. There's a theory of scarcity and a theory of abundance. Somehow, bulk of our scholars fall into theory of scarcity. We highlight the scarcity. And part of the reason is economics has become kind of a mainstream discipline. Don't forget economics, even etymologically the concept economics has come from scarcity. Now when you reproduce or when you emphasize scarcity, the psychologists, particularly Gustav Jung, will say you are reproducing fear. It doesn't help. So it is important to shift our image or shift our gaze from the theory of scarcity to the theory of abundance. The Chinese have done precisely that, so did the European Union. Let me talk about the European Union for a minute. After the Second World War, don't forget, when it comes to war, when it comes to killing people, the human record that we have, the largest number of people that got killed in war was the Second World War. 66 million people got killed. In 6 years' time, that is, every year 11 million people got killed. That is the highest number ever in recorded history. 6 million Jews got killed, 22 million Russians got killed. In one day in Dresden, 40,000 got killed, not to mention Hiroshima and Nagasaki. From that era, if you bring today, believe it or not, we are in a much better shape. And I can give you a figure, 2012, only 120,000, not all killing is bad, only 120,000 people died in war. Though 500,000 people died of crime-related violence. And you'll be surprised, in 2012, 800,000 people committed suicide. More people actually commit suicide than die of human violence. But those suicides were not the Taliban and Afghan and Pakistan, no. Those suicides, the largest number of suicides still is Lithuania, South Korea, Japan, France, Switzerland, all developed, relatively developed countries or developed countries, not in sub-Saharan Africa. So suicide is also not about. So the point is, we have to shift to abundance. Now what Europe has done after the Second World War, they looked into what they had more. They had coal and steel in abundance, particularly France and Germany. And that's precisely the reason European Union, when it comes to France and Germany, has worked much better than Britain entering it. Because Britain entered European Union because of the theory of scarcity and not theory of abundance. And that's the reason why they are having a difficult time. France and Germany, on the other hand, they looked into the abundance, particularly coal and steel, and from that small kind of abundance, they brought this whole dimension of European to the point that Hitler would have committed suicide if he would have seen France and Germany roaming around like children. So the second example of theory of abundance would of course be China. The way they made use of the population is remarkable. It is something to see. They have a literacy rate of nearly 96%. Well, that's the oldest textual civilization, don't forget. Chinese are the oldest textual civilization. It's unthinkable. You go thousands of years. The reason they can talk about Confucius and Lao Tzu just like anyone is because it's actually textual. So as a textual civilization, they made use of literacy. Even look at Korea. People talk about South Korea and North Korea. This is interesting. Both Koreas, one can say authoritarian, fascist, other capitalistic, whatever term you use, both Koreas, 99% literacy. Theory of abundance. I think Bangladesh has two things in abundance, and we need to combine these two things. One is the population. It's 160 million plus people. We have in abundance, and we have made a good use of it. Don't forget the very fact that remittances is working, and also the garment industry is mainly because of this abundance. Take it as a positive side, not in a negative side that is a cheap labor. Whole Africa is cheap labor. But they are not number 2 in the world ready-made garment producers. Don't underestimate Bangladesh, for God's sake. We are number 2 in the world. People say, these are the cheap labor, this is the Kulsum and Rehana doing all these things. There are a number of Kulsum and Rehana in the whole of Africa and the whole of India, but they are not number 2 in the world. So in theory of abundance, The other thing that we have is water. And here we have Bengal also. When you say talk of water, don't forget Bangladesh is a water country. As much as China is actually a water kingdom, people forget. It's a water kingdom. There's a book actually in that titled China Water Kingdom. But Bangladesh is also water country. In Bangladesh, they say Nodi Desh. Nodi Matri Desh, sorry. Nodi Matri Desh. Water-centric country. Now in that water discourse, Bay of Bengal, the Navy, the submarine, all have to brought in. See, if one can combine the water resources, and we are blessed, believe it or not, we are blessed when it comes to rain. The water that you see in the rivers, even Brahmaputra, 80% of the water that you see in Jamuna comes from rain and not from Tibet, not from Yalnu-Sanko. Only 18% comes from Yalnu-Sanko, which is important. I'm not trying to tell that that's not important, that you can dam it and each rivers are living beings. But 80% of the water is actually rainwater, so you are blessed. Way back I wrote a paper saying gold drops falling from the sky. Actually, it's gold drops falling from the sky. We have not gone into that engineering, in that sociology, in the psychology of using the water that comes to us almost heavenly. So I would request to shift our gaze from theory of scarcity to theory of abundance, look into what we have more, look into the civilizational dimension, and I think Professor Lisha correctly talked about Pratik Dipankar and also Zhang He remarkably, and I think one can see why they have a longer view of the thing. If you look at those longer view, you can easily see that Bangladesh that you see today is not going to remain as you see today 20 years and 50 years from now. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Remarks were very profoundly made. The points were raised. One of the differences, of course, you began by saying that there was a consensus in dealing with China. In many ways, of course, there is a sense when we talk about China, because when we talk about just the ideological, the rhetorical levels of friendship and all that sort of thing, it's like motherhood. I mean, no one really critiques China. Right now, however, one of the things that's happening in the world, and this is important for us to understand, we are dealing with China in a dollar and cent situation. I mean, we are negotiating projects, individual projects. We've seen people like Mahathir of Malaysia, we've seen Imran Khan of Pakistan, who had, of course, and who still do, it's an A priori position that China is an absolutely benefactor friend. At the same time, there is need to somehow negotiate a modest league with China in a way that mutually you benefit from that relationship. I will, of course, open the floor for discussions now, and in the Cosmos mode, it will be a free-flowing discussion with the chair intervening sometimes in order to make points or to keep peace should that need arise. So I already have 3 speakers on my list. Mr. Inam Chaudhary, Ambassador Mahbub Zaman, and Mr. Chairman Munshi Faiz Ahmed. And we have Ambassador Tariq Karim eventually, who is raring to go, of course, not just for the Bengal presidency, which he will take up, but he's one who has had experience in both China and India. I will begin by giving the floor to Mr. Inam Chaudhary. Could I request that the speakers identify themselves and their affiliation for our record, because all interventions are being recorded. Mr. Inam Chaudhary. Is there a microphone? Yes. Over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Inam Chaudhry, and I'm the Vice President of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Chairman of its Foreign Relations Committee. I congratulate Prognosis Foundation and its Chairman Inayatullah Khan for organizing this very timely and interesting dialogue on Bangladesh-China relationship prognosis for the future. As we speculate on the future, it is necessary that we have a proper and correct understanding and knowledge of the present and the past. I would like to point out here that contrary to popular perception, China did assist and cooperate with Bangladesh in a very difficult initial days. I'll cite just 3 examples. China cooperated with Bangladesh in our membership bid for the UNCTAD in 1972, when Bangladesh had not become a member of the United Nations. During UNCTAD 3, 1972 held in Santiago de Chile, I had the privilege of leading the Bangladesh delegation. I carried a letter from Prime Minister Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman requesting to President Allende, requesting for his support and cooperation. Ambassador Mohsin, subsequently a Foreign Secretary, was the other member of the delegation. We were received warmly, but the President's office advised us to contact the Chinese delegation to obtain their no objection. We contacted the Chinese delegation and also the Pakistani delegation. The Chinese delegation showed great understanding and agreed not to oppose our membership application. We were elated, though after our election, the Chinese and the Pakistani delegation registered their note of dissent to the resolution on membership, which had already been taken. Secondly, I was sent by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman to China before China had recognized Bangladesh. China, through the good office of Ambassador Kaiser in Yangon. I went to China even before the Chinese diplomatic recognition in 1975 October, and entered into 4 agreements with Chinese state corporations on behalf of Bangladesh state-owned corporations. Thirdly, I just want to mention that China kept on buying our jute and jute products when in those days we were facing difficulties. Now, in the present, we do hope, it has been very forcefully made these points, but I just want to reiterate that we hope China will show similar understanding in resolving this very difficult Rohingya issue, which is really a burning one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhry. Would you close the door behind, please? Could you close the door and have the conference outside? Yeah. Okay. We will then move to, I have another speaker on my list, Mr. Salahuddin Qasim Khan, but now I'll go to Mr. Mahbub Usman. And those who are identified as speakers, can you raise your hand so the microphone can be.
Thank you, sir. Just I would like to remind myself that, remind everybody that I have 2 hats or chapeau. That one is as the Secretary of Asia Pacific Affairs, and also another hat that is on individual capacity, what I foresee and analyze. So I will be speaking on my individual capacity because I don't speak on behalf of the ministry. Just I would like to make some, general, observations I don't believe at all that we are a failed state or we are weak in our capacity. We have been very much following a consistent and stable policy, if you would look, and my senior co-founder attest to that it's specifically clear in the Article 25 of the Constitution that we base our principles on the core principles of the United Nations, that is peaceful settlement of disputes, and that's what the father of the nation said, that we believe in peaceful settlement of disputes and সকলের সাথে বন্ধুত্ব গড়ে কারোর সাথে নয়, the friendship towards all. That doesn't mean that somebody might question that if someone has some adversarial relationship, would we keep on friendly? But that is not.
first and foremost, we see people that he is a potential friend. But if you have biased and preconceived ideas, some people might say that I don't like this guy, but I tell you that how can you say, have you met him or have you spoken to him? You have a preconceived idea, that he dictates that guy. So you can't start any discussion or negotiation if you have a preconceived idea. We are free and open mind. And I would like to say that we have to be very much cautious and realistic on our approach. Because these are the geostrategic, geopolitical, realities. Our location, our situations in South Asia. We have to be very much, careful and cautious in our approach. Like, with our neighbors, we have to be cautious because there are the political concerns and the feelings or the aspirations, levels of the political leaders have to be met. They have to come to a common reach or understanding. Like India, this is my personal feeling, there is no common solution or formula in the case of the river water sharing that will satisfy both the parties, and the CM of West Bengal didn't agree to a formula, Uttaradev didn't agree to a formula, and then we had Mamata Banerjee. And all we have been talking both sides is that we want 60,000 cusac, 20,000 cusac. We are not, delving deep into what the other side's, aspirations were. They have to, even when you go for a negotiation, I saw in my Geneva days that they were telling that give us a bridge so we can have some commonality when we can interact together. So I think that there has to be a formula that it will satisfy, both parties. And this guarantee clause or something, that is far away from reality now. And there has to be a, give or take relationship. And regarding the Rohingya issue, this is my personal assessment that our Prime Minister has told in very clear terms that the solution lies in Myanmar and it has to be found in Myanmar. And she clearly spelled out 4 or 5 conditionalities. That setting a fact-finding mission, and creating some sort of enclave. It is something criticized like enclave. What does it mean? But I think she was meeting the idea like some protective or safe zones where their rights, their privileges would be protected. We had this because the world community was silent in the case of the Rwandan tragedy, and this can't happen anymore. We can't have any genocide anymore. So the solution has to lie in Myanmar, and I have a feeling that there has to be a realignment or rebalancing of the power structure, of course through peaceful means of the democratic process. But I leave it the thought at that. How people have it. I don't know. And regarding the China, relationship with Bangladesh, we have the 2016 visit of the Prime Minister, of President Xi Jinping was a very significant one. We are signing on to a lot of agreements. And of course, our Prime Minister told in very clear terms that 2021 we want to, graduate to a middle income status, and 2041 we would like to transform into a developed country status. So this One Belt, One Road initiative could be a platform or some connectivity, through which we could realize our visions, thoughts, and aspirations. So these things have partly been identified, and there are also some other sectors which also has been identified. I think I will stop at that because there are also other speakers, but I might come back again to that after.
Thank you. You spoke in your individual capacity, of course, but I'm sure that the Foreign Office will entirely agree with you, with whatever you said. All right, we will now give the floor to the chairman of the EIS. Could you give him the microphone, please, here? Ambassador Munshi Faiz Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Cosmos deserves a huge congratulations for organizing this very important event. I was ambassador of Bangladesh in China for 5.5 years almost, from 2007 to 2012. So I have my perception of various things, and I will speak from my own, on my own personal behalf. First thing that I would like, there are so many things that I would like to say, but I'll try to limit myself to a few specific points. First thing that I would like to comment on is this, that Bangladesh-China relations focus mainly on trade and defense. I think we should rephrase it. It's not only trade, and there is really, if you use the word defense, it gives the wrong meaning. We bring a lot of weapons and arms, etc., or equipment from China, but we do not really have a kind of defense alliance or something like that with China. That, I think, should be kept in mind, and our relations with China is based around economic development partnership, which is not only trade, it goes all over. It has technical cooperation, finance, investment, cooperation in agriculture, culture, education. So it is all over the place, and all of these are very important. I just mentioned agriculture as very important because we use a lot of hybrid rice, hybrid vegetables these days, and that has really tremendously changed Bangladesh. And our cooperation with China in these fields are extremely important. So that also brings me to the other point, that Chinese businessmen do business with rich people in Bangladesh. That's true, because when you talk about business, it has to be between businessmen and who are usually rich. But the benefit goes to everybody. It's not just limited to the business people. Yes, business people get their benefit, but it also benefits the common people. Like when we have this cooperation in agriculture, cooperation in education, it all benefits all stages of people in Bangladesh. And when we have these infrastructure projects like the Padma Bridge and others, yes, some people make money, some even making money illegally, but still it benefits all the country and all people. So it's not, it's very simplistic and wrong to say that China does business with these people in Bangladesh. There was a question that I wanted. I'm going in a sequential way that things came up. So there is a question I have to one of our speakers. I think Professor Yuan, Mr. Yuan Chino, about the Pyra plant. Can you please inform us about how does Pyra plant compare with the Japanese plant in Maheshkhali? That would be something useful for us to know. Because you said that the Pyra plant would be the first eco-friendly coal-fired power plant in Bangladesh. Professor Afsan Chaudhary made a comment about our readiness about the Rohingya influx. Yes, I'm sure our officials, our government, knew about these, the torture, etc., against the atrocities against the Rohingya people. But when we talk about readiness, what kind of readiness? Should we have had some camps built already to receive them? Or should we have kept some guns ready to kill them? So, you see, this is a situation for which you cannot be too ready. You know that things can happen, but you can only address it when it happens. You cannot very much prepare for it. But that does not mean that we did not have any exchanges with Myanmar. We had a lot of efforts to improve relations with Myanmar in different areas. And there are, I think, so many agreements and MOUs with Myanmar, between Myanmar and Bangladesh, that anybody would be proud of them. But the difficulties or the challenges that we have not been able to implement most of them. And that is for various reasons. But that maybe we can discuss another day.
Which day?
Because there is no time here. Yeah, that's right. Then we have talked about the trilateral relationship in South Asia. I think that is a very interesting idea and it has a lot of value. But I think that it is a little too simplistic. Because Bangladesh's relations, Bangladesh is doing a lot of things, not just having relations with India and China. Japan is a very important country for us. South Korea is a very important country for us. EU is extremely important partner for us. So it's not limited to that, but it is definitely the most important set of relations for Bangladesh. There is no doubt about that. So I think when we talk about this, we should also talk about what we should do, how we should pursue our relations with these two countries. So we give a lot of hype to the concept of balance, as if we have to work out a balance and then deal with these countries. I think that is very wrong. The balance will automatically happen. We should pursue our national interest, and we should pursue each project separately on its merit. Wherever we get the best terms and conditions, we go for that. And we should not worry about what a third country thinks. Because if we start thinking too much, we start measuring too many yards and pounds, we'll never get things done. And that is the experience that we have. So I have always been advising my colleagues in the government that we should not be too worried about what the others think. We should pursue our national interest, because both China and India are our friends, and they will understand what is to our benefit. They are not going to hold us hostage on that. So that is, I think, very important to remember. And there was some talk about China trying to say that it is trying to benefit the world by everything that it's doing. I think that is not what I hear China say. China is talking about mutual benefit, win-win cooperation. And that is something that we should hold China onto. We must hold China to its words on these. And I'm sure they will listen, because they understand their interests as well. Because it is in their interest to be seen as promoters of mutual benefit, not as just grabbing benefits like what the West did before, the colonialists did before. It's not, China is not behaving in the same way. But sometimes there are misunderstandings, and there are mistakes made from all sides. Like when we talk about the BRI, it is a grand concept, and there may be so many projects already there, and there will be more projects on it afterwards in the future. But when we get into these projects, we must consider our own benefits as well. We are not doing things for China, we are doing things for ourselves. And if we do that correctly, we should be able to cooperate. And that is what the essence of cooperation under BRI is all about. The chairman spoke about the pilot fish and shark syndrome. I think it's a very interesting thing. But then the dilemma comes when there are two sharks. How do you decide which shark to go with? There are two answers to it. One is that if you are aligning with or close to one shark, the other shark may not attack you because you are close to another shark.
That is the second paradigm, when you seek.
This is what, yes sir.
You add to your strength by extra region.
Or you can also try to find a situation where the two sharks come nearer, then you are secure with both.
Then they fight themselves.
That is, I hope they don't fight. This is where I come, sir. That I hope that China and India have better relations so that we can benefit from both of them. And here I want to bring another point here, that I think that when China interacts with South Asia, their main prize is India. They are looking for friendship and cooperation with India more, because that will add much greater value to them. So that is what they're trying to do. But the Indians are a little coy right now, but they will also understand that it is to their benefit. And when that happens, that will also benefit all of us. I think there's just one thing I'll say, and then I'll leave, because there are so many things I was trying to say. But let's say what we expect from China on Rohingya issue, because many people have this saying that China is siding with Myanmar. I think that is also very simplistic. China is not siding with Myanmar. China is trying to do things in its own interest, because it has interest in Myanmar, it has interest in Bangladesh and other places. But it thinks that if Myanmar is able to weather this storm with less damage, it will be beneficial to China. But here I'd like to tell my Chinese friends that whatever you do today, if you condemn the Myanmaris, they will still have to depend on you in future. So you should not be worried, and please work in favor of humanity, not in favor of Bangladesh or in favor of Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll close the list now. I'll read out the those who have sought to speak, and they will speak in this order. One, Mr. Salahuddin Qasim Khan. Number 2, Ambassador Tariq Karim. Number 3, General Munir Zaman. Number 4, High Commissioner Selina Mohsin. Number 5, General Zahir. And number 6, Mr. Masood Khan. Might I request that you confine your interventions to 3 minutes each, which gives us 18 minutes, and I'll give 2 minutes each to the speakers present on the podium to wrap up. So let me begin with Mr. Salahuddin Qasim Khan.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the floor. I want to give a private sector on that stage.
Is it on?
Private sector perspective on this issue. Being from the port city of Chittagong, and the chairman of Cosmos is also from that area, I think we will feel the brunt of what is happening in that region. You know, I'm talking about the Rohingya issue. But before that, Professor Lee talked about the 1,000-year history with Bengal. And particularly the port city of Chittagong, because Admiral Janha came to Chittagong twice, if I am correct, in 1452. Yes. And I would like to propose that we should remember that important event by naming one of the avenues to the new Konnafuli tunnel, which is being built by China, so that future generations know about these long historical links with China. And the other is, I think, Professor Imtiaz has encapsulated the whole relationship, but regarding encouraging our younger generations to go to China, I think we should have a Confucius Institute in the Chittagong University. I think this is very important to do study on the Chinese economic model of development, learn Chinese, and go to Chinese universities for higher education. After having said that, we in the private sector were really looking forward to the land route link to Kunming via Myanmar. And our friend from the Delhi, the Chinese representative in Delhi said about the corridor, the India, Bangladesh, China corridor, but that is never going to happen unless the Rohingya issue is resolved. And quite correctly, this is not just a Bangladesh-Myanmar issue, it's a regional issue. I was in Malaysia. The Malaysian Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir, the Qatar ruler was there. He made a very strong statement on the Rohingya issue. Because if it is not resolved in a proper way, this could become a replication of what is happening in the Middle East. And it will affect the whole Bay of Bengal region. So China, I think, has to be more proactive. We don't want the creation, exactly 700,000 people left Palestine in 1947. The same number which left Rohingyas to come to Bangladesh. And Arakan has been a historic state for many centuries. The historical background of Arakan must never be forgotten, because they were, Muslims in the courts. The chief poets were from Muslims. They had a very important role in the Arakan state, which I think the British should have given to Bangladesh when they left. But this was not done. In fact, the Arakanese came and saw Jinnah, but for some reason they were not entertained. So China, being a good friend of Bangladesh, must be more proactive, because the perception of the common citizen is that our big friend China and even India are not doing what is necessary to resolve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Points very well made, I think. Specific proposals, the naming of this canal route as Shanghai route, Confucian Institute in Chittagong, and also the point about the Rohingyas. And I think by now it's very clear to our Chinese friends that one of the takeaways from this event would be the sentiments in-house and outside this house in the country with regard to Chinese position and perhaps to a certain extent Indian position as well on the Rohingya issue. Okay, I will now recognize Ambassador Tariq Karim.
Thank you very much, Chair. And also kudos to Cosmos Foundation for holding this. I want to confine myself just to responding to 2 or 3 points that came up during the preceding discussions. Very interesting discussions, very fascinating facets of the relationship that have come forward. Some you can agree with, some you may differ. I'd like to first touch on the point raised by Professor Afsan Chaudhary on the trilateralism, or what I would call triangulating our relationships with our 2 Asian giants, our 2 giant neighbors. And I think, in a sense, we have come to a point where we don't realize our own importance. Because for long we had an adversarial or on-off love-hate relationship with one, and a sort of reactive relationship with the other. We are now at a point where we have equally good relations, or we can claim to have equally good relations with both the Asian giants. I think we don't understand how to use this relationship. So I would not say it's a question of weakness. I would say that we have not understood our own strength. Our strength is in the fact that we enable India to actually try and operationalize what it was locis to actis. It cannot happen without us being there. And we are also enabling China looking west. These 2 come and meet naturally in Bangladesh. They also meet in Myanmar, but that's a bit of a problem. Even if Myanmar continues to remain a hermit kingdom, or a state in splendid isolation, I'd like to touch on the point raised by Professor Imtiaz. There was a time when China and India were juxtaposed. China was number 1 global economy, India number 2, and I think it's not very far off when they'll be in the same position. So in a sense, history is cyclical. It is repeating itself. What was our situation, and thank you for prodding me on that. If you look at the British India map of 1907, you will see Dhaka at the epicenter of the line of communication, which extended with the coastal shipping from Karachi, Madras, Calcutta, Yangon, beyond east to Penang and Singapore.
The presidency.
It was the 3rd largest presidency. Well, it was the largest in the 3 presidencies, with the highest GDP, and also the highest per capita GDP, in a city called Shillong. When the partition happened, and that's where I think the whole thing, the partition syndrome was so overpowering, so emotionally charged, that we forgot to think straight. And I think even today India is paying a price. You raise the waters, it's true. You cannot share waters, they are fluid. You have to manage the waters. And because the partition of the subcontinent took place, the partition of waters and the skies took place, and within India the partition of the waters took place. That's why they have not been able to resolve their own water disputes within the states in India. I think where we can play a role is to try and keep stressing the importance of ours being a water-centered state, that our economy depends on reviving the waters, and where we can look to China for some assistance, because they have done a huge amount of work in managing their own water systems within China. They are fortunate, more fortunate than we are, because they have not divided the rivers. It is within one sovereign configuration. We have divided the sovereignty of the rivers. That's where the problem comes in. They can help us in building up our dredging industry and becoming the dredger service providers to the whole of the subcontinent, because we have an edge in our historical knowledge as well as an edge in our experience. Right now, India has suddenly discovered that it needs to revive its national waterways. Why? For economic reasons as well as for environmental reasons. And we have been striving that, but as the lowest riparian, we have had our inbuilt problems. We cannot do it unless the upper riparians cooperate. So perhaps that's one way of going forward. How we manage our relationship with the two giants will depend entirely on us. Each country deals with its neighbors, big or small, in the best manner that it sees it can further its own national objectives. I think China knows where it wants to go. India perhaps knows a little, not fully. We are still trying to figure out how we are going to manage.
So these are the three levels. Thank you. Good. All right. Now, next on my list is General Munir Zaman.
Thank you, Chair. I have a rather short and a direct question to Professor Lee and also to the Chair. The question is regarding how does China position itself and see itself in terms of BRI? Because I think I'll go again. I have a rather short and a direct question to the Chair and Professor Lee. The BRI, the road itself, which is in fact a sea route, has got, besides its economic implications, it also has strategic implications. So therefore, how do you see BRI vis-a-vis the new Indo-Pacific strategy? Do you see a conflict here, or do you see that you can manage a relationship in terms of the Indo-Pacific strategy? I also see that as a key maritime nation ourselves, Bangladesh, as a Bay of Bengal country, we are seeing increasing competitiveness, strategic competitiveness in the Indian Ocean region, for example. The recent strategic competitiveness over increased influences in the Maldives should be a case and example to be seen. So therefore, how does BRI and Bangladesh as a member country of BRI, how does Bangladesh fit itself in terms of Indo-Pacific strategy or as a member of a BRI member country? That's a question I will also leave it to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll try and focus on this in my wrapping up remarks. Next would be High Commissioner Selina Mohsen. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Cosmos for arranging this wonderful session. I always feel, this is my own perception, that wherever China is doing its work, including One Belt and One Road, and in small countries where China is involved, it is China who is gaining more than the countries in which they are involved. It is China who is earning more money, and they don't give you grant, they give you loan, than the country in which they are working.
So it's win plus and win.
Yes. For instance, in Pakistan, China is in a position of strength than Pakistan is after that water port had been made. And I always feel that China is not very strong on human rights and not very strong on transparency and accountability. Maybe I'm wrong. And I am also aware that most of the smaller countries, including Bangladesh, small in the terms of size, not population, India's, we are not very strong in negotiations. We are unable to negotiate in a way that we come into a win-win situation, and we are in a position where we gain as well as the other party. We are a little bit ambivalent regarding India and China, and this has been seen in quite a few negotiations and quite a few decisions. And another thing is this: if China, in One Belt and One Road, China is the one which will be the winner, and of course the countries it passes through will also win. But China should also emphasize on education and literacy. Literacy, education, quality education. I don't mean just nonsense. And literacy, quality literacy. If that they highlight and prioritize, it will be better. And if they try to get less money out of countries, smaller countries in which they are investing, it would be better and would be a balanced way of investment, development and growth for a vast country like China. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. General Zahid. General Zahid, are you there? Mike is not there. Mike will
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to bring home two realities of the recent time. One is India is deep into Bangladesh, and it is now more deeper than any time before. At the same time, I want to bring to these realities is that the China-Bangladesh relations have been bruised by their role in the Rohingya issue. And especially the love that China had from the common people, the common masses, there has been a dent. I think China has to really rethink, taking into these two realities, how they are going to shape up their relation with Bangladesh. And also, China is facing some hurdles in their intrusion in Southeast Asia also. If you see the case of Maldives and also Sri Lanka. And so they have to also rethink how they should also reshape their relationship, especially a strategic relationship with South Asia. So I would like the response from the chair and also from our Chinese guest speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. My last two speakers, I will of course give a remark. My last two speakers will be Masood Khan and Shahan Khan.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to thank Cosmos Foundation for another yet successful dialogue today. And one question or sort of a topic I'm very inquisitive about because I work actively in the power sector in Bangladesh, and so with the importing of investment from China, sort of my question is, how could we avoid the similar situation that is occurring in Pakistan, after Imran Khan has come into the picture, and similar situation happening in Sri Lanka with the Hambantota port, and as well as Mr. Mahathir has also come into power at the age of 92. he has also stopped all Chinese funded projects. And I feel like Bangladesh is moving towards that direction in terms of development. But how could we continue with the funding from China, but at the same time avoid the similar kind of trap? And also the SARC is also declining, as Afsanako mentioned as well. It seems like China might become our strongest partner, which it already is actually. So yeah, that's my question, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good question. Last one is Shan Khan. Where is Shan? Yeah, Shan. Shan. You can, yeah, I can. You need a mic, Shan. You have not needed in the past.
No, I was just going to, when you sit through one of these sessions, you get like questions popping in your mind every 5 minutes or so, but the one that I've chosen to sort of zero in on, saying the chair's recommendation to be specific. So we're always talking about how we want China to do something about the Rohingya situation. We want China to do something about the Rohingya situation without being specific at all about like what it is that we actually want them to do. Can we recognize that the specific thing that needs to happen in Myanmar is the change in the 1982 citizenship law, which is the root of all the evil, as that is called. And for that to change, I think some other country has to impress upon them that this sort of citizenship law, 3 grades to citizenship, is no longer acceptable in this world, and they have to like move on with the times. So who can do that actually? Can China actually do that, given that it is such an internal thing? Like nobody wants the citizenship law dictated by somebody else. So even given China's influence, I think it could be difficult to convince Myanmar that to go this way. So that's it.
Thank you, Shan. Yeah, good point, of course. Now, I would leave it to the panelists if you want to, at this point in time, come in for a couple of minutes each to react to whatever has been said, either vis-a-vis your remarks or otherwise, and then I will wrap up. So, shall we do from left to right with Professor Afsan Chaudhry?
Thank you. This is not one sideways. The reason why China deals only or mostly with rich people is because China is in a formal trade relationship, formal economic development relationship. China is formal sector is run by the rich people. You don't have to face this your problem. The data is okay. So which is why, unlike India, which has got a huge informal sector, including let's say smuggling or cattle smuggling or whatever, and the informal sector is much stronger. This is why the public relationship with India is strong. That's all. There is not. As far as what China should do or what India should do, the most important thing is what we should do. I believe we have weak capacity and we're not willing to admit it. If you are in conversation with government officials or government-funded think tank officials, you will see that very clearly. They're absolutely convinced they did everything right, particularly on the Rohingyas. Now, I believe the question was asked, what should we have done? My main area of work is actually in history of 1971. So I have looked at very ancient documents, particularly in Chittagong areas, where you have World War I document which says Myanmar is threatening to push Rohingyas out. This is a very ancient problem. And since we have taught Rohingya issues for 2 semesters now, you have a choice to make. They've been sending people all through, which is fine. They say these are Bangladeshis, which is fine. They sent them in 1977. They sent them in 1992. They changed the citizenship law in 1984. 82. And you still kept the border open. Because the Chinese are very open. Chinese have, and they were laughing. Forgive me, generals, there are lots of generals. They did not laugh in 77. They said so. And we laugh now because you are no match for us now. We have Chinese support. We have dealt very well with the Russians. We are stronger than we ever were. You are no match for us. This is what they said to me. I was in Myanmar. No, and this was Mellon Foundation thing. Point is, were we not supposed to know this? Now, if you think that they, somebody said that, what should we have done? Should we have been prepared with cans? We should have been prepared in 1977 by shutting the borders. If you want them, that is fine. Then don't weep so loudly. If you don't want them, then do something about it. That is what's called preparation. Whenever I say this, several generals will stand up and say, do you want war? I say, look, yes, several people have said, what is your defense? Why do you have one of the bloody biggest army? Why do you buy weapons if you're not ready to use it against anyone who is going to, you're not even perceived as a threat. You're being perceived as something, I don't want to use the word joke, but you're seen as not effective. Why are you buying arms? Why do you have an army? You are in no shape to influence the decision of your neighbor, because your neighbor knows you're not going to do anything. Let us put about it. When I was last visiting Myanmar, it became so obvious, it was scary. When they came to Bangladesh and were holding the session, the only thing they talked about is how they were going to send it back. They were not even saying we are going to send it back. They were saying this is what we are going to do. And as somebody who studies Myanmar regularly, because I write in international journals on Myanmar and the Rohingya issue, I see that clearly. They are there. They were ready. How come we didn't know this? I mean, I am just a university teacher. I knew this. They didn't know. Bangladesh government, foreign ministry, Bangladesh defense services didn't know they were coming. You could say, we love peace, we love humanity. Great. In that case, I'm all with you. I love him because, I have been offered unbelievable consultancies which I have refused for going and giving them advice on what should be done about the Rohingya, because I have been an international civil servant. So that's my point. If you want to be ready, if you want to deal with it, face it. You can't, after the crisis happens, insist in a world where they don't give a damn about who's killing whom. But let us we pass a resolution in the United Nations saying this is a genocide. So, I won't listen to you. That's the point which Shan makes. Of course, you read the Australian National University profile on the Myanmar Rohingya crisis, that China has been put in a position where it cannot have a influence on Myanmar. China worked at it. China took 20 years to become so powerful that they can tell Myanmar, that look, China, we won't listen to everything you say. We listened once. We are not listening to you now. That's what I mean is development of internal capacity. It's as simple as that. We are in no position. We keep on saying we will go to UN. Who gives a fuck about UN? Nobody does. If you want to, I'm not reporting personal, private conversations I've had with diplomats or experts coming in. One of the American Chinese told me, why can't Bangladesh be like Myanmar? Look at Myanmar. It has solved this China problem. China has not invested. Where is it? If China cannot leave Myanmar tomorrow if it wants to. China can leave Bangladesh because it doesn't invest money. It's like a contractor. Contractors, once the project is over, contractors can go home. And they can go home. That is why China needs rich people in Bangladesh. Because anybody who is not doing business with the government is not going to make big money. You're going to make money, but not big money. Which is why China's stake in the government is much higher. That is why. Thank you.
Okay. I can't invite one or the other of the generals that we have, two very senior ones, General Munir Zaman and General Zahid, to react to it. I won't specifically invite you, but should you want to, feel free. Do you want to say something? Okay.
Do you want me?
Yeah. I always want to hear you.
Okay. Well, a couple of things. Very briefly. I don't know where to start. Anyway, I think we talked about water currency and also referred to river management. When we talk about rivers, there's a serious problem in our understanding. Some of us who have been, known as critical, water, what we call people writing about water issues for years, for us, river is not just water. River consists of, and just to make it simple, we can call it as wells. There are 4 letters which are important when we have this concept of water, which somehow has not gone into the policy making. River must have 4 things. River means water, energy, biodiversity, and sediment. See, when we say we share 50-50%, nobody's talking about sharing the sediment. And how can we share biodiversity? How can we tell the fish, don't go on the other side? Or the flora and the fauna, how can you share? So in negotiation, one has to bring this critical hydrology into account, or bring those who are to say, look, you can't do that, simply as that. You have to take water as a living being, which New Zealand has done, as you know, and then start rethinking of how to progress. So that's one thought I got flag here, just to give a sense. On the question of China, India, Bangladesh, let us try to do something out of the box. And I take this last year, and the finance minister agreed to it, holding it. Let us have a China, Bangladesh, India business summit on an annual basis, with an eye to develop not only Bangladesh, but with an eye to develop also the Northeast. Because the Northeast people are really hungry for development. I remember in Aizawl in Mizoram, they were all talking about having connectivity with China. Though Delhi had a different sense of what connectivity means when it comes to China, but the Mizoram scholars, they have no problem in thinking, because that's quite natural. So I think we should think of China, Bangladesh, India summit. There are problems, but we need to come out of, as I say, always look into abundance, look into solutions. Yes, there are problems. Life is full of problems, but just by looking into problems is not going to work. Let us try 1, 2. There should be A, B, C of how to win over the enemy. And I go back to Sun Tzu. You need to win over the enemy. That's all that you have to know. Not win over the friends. The friends will always be there. And I've been telling almost for 1 year that it is important that our Prime Minister not only visit Delhi on the issue of Rohingya, but also visit Beijing. Not once, not twice, not as many times as possible. Because you need to win over both Delhi and Beijing when it comes to Rohingya. Yes, they are not with us, we can understand, but there is no point in going to the US and European Union. They are all with us on this issue for different reasons. So from that point of view, I think it's time to redesign some of the diplomatic efforts. Now, when it comes to 1980 citizenship law and all, believe it or not, it's quite easy to do that. It's easy because the law does not fall under, if you look at the UN Charter and the international legal instruments that I've been referring to, it doesn't go. It contradicts the international legal instruments. You can get Myanmar on that. And there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. Now, somebody was referring is what Bangladesh should have done. I think Mushibai has left. What Bangladesh should have done, we knew it, we couldn't do it. No, I think we could have done. When we knew that this thing is coming up, the moment the 13th Brigade Division was put into Arakan, everybody knows about the 13th Brigade Division. It's a notorious division. Because Myanmar has problems not only with Rohingyas, they have problems with Wow, with Afghan, they have huge. And this 13th Division was known for its, heinous activities. So the moment when it was put in the 13th Division, we should have raised the flag higher and internationally. That should have been done. But look, the 13th Division has come up. This is a notorious division. This is where I think our intelligence ought to have been, much sharper. Or to think and not wait. We waited a little bit. 2 weeks, if you remember. We waited for 2 weeks because we were looking at Delhi because Narendra Modi's visit to Nabila was coming, and I thought it didn't work. It simply didn't work. So my point here is we could have done a lot of things and not just wait, because there's no way we could stop the borders. I'm totally against this idea that say, oh, we should stop, close the border. You can't close the border. All 71, all under our understanding of 71 is refugees, believe it or not. This is in our genes, in fact. As a family after family which are refugees. To say that we will not allow refugees in another country to Bangladesh is not something going to happen in the entire, it did not happen in the entire civilization history of Bangladesh, and it's not going to happen ever. We have always invited outsiders. Always. Look at history. We have never stopped outsiders. We have never feared outsiders. We had an interest in love for outsiders. The last point that I want to make on the Chinese point, because Iftikhar has mentioned it, about Sri Lanka's death. Please remember, you have to be, there has to be solid evidence. I guess it was last month when the new naval research center that has been established, where we had the Sri Lankan former naval chief come, and he made very clear, look, he said, we are 5 times more indebted to the West than China. Why people are not talking about that? They are 5 times more indebted. So the point here is, we need to look into perspective. Yes, it is a problem, I can understand. If we take loans, if we can't use it, it is our problem. And so, yes, it has to be done in a nice way. But the way, I think, if you look at Sri Lanka, some of the criticism that Sri Lanka is facing, I think it is unfair, because there are more complicities there, and I don't want to highlight on this. Last point on the human rights, because the ambassador has talked about the human rights issue. With Donald Trump in power, the concept of human rights, I think one has to reinvent and rethink. Thank you.
Okay. Professor Gita?
This is the first time for me to visit in Bangladesh. After frankly, I tell you, I'm very enjoying staying here, especially after this meeting. I listen many scholars' speech and your comment. I think 3 points. First, I think we should pay attention push the relationship between China and Bangladesh. And maybe many things we should do, not only push understand each other, including other. Later, some participants mentioned the higher education. Maybe next time we exchanging after this. Second, I think the China and the Indian relationship is very important, not affecting the China and India, but also the regional, South Asia and in the world. It happens this is very become China and Indian relationship become good and good, more better. The third, I think we should all of these regional pushes the regional cooperation, especially China and South Asia, or cross the Himalaya. We get an idea, cross the Himalaya or another things. Both of us work on the Asia Center. It's very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Wan Churong, a specific question was addressed to you on the PIRA and the comparison with Japan. Yeah, okay.
First, I respond to the former in China. He said he let me compare the Japan and China in price. I think this is meaningless. Everybody know Bangladesh brands every country, brands China, brands India, American, European, and every country, especially major economy, can provide opportunity for Bangladesh. China can provide it, India can provide it, and American can provide it. And which the opportunity is the biggest? I think everyone know it. and Bangladesh people and the Bangladesh government can decide it. So I think the compare India, Japan and China is Middle East. And second is some countries think one by one road is opportunity. Some countries think it's danger. It's a negative factor. And in Bangladesh, one by one road is danger and or is the opportunity. I think Bangladesh people can divide it. And last question about the talk about I think is very good question is compare the Sri Lanka, Pakistan, the diet track. We talk about often. I think it's big. I have been the Hambantota lots of times, and include Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka there is China built a Hambantota port, and the Colombo port, Colombo port city, and Sri Lanka southern highway and railway. So many big projects. Sri Lanka civil war, too many years. And he sent the end of the war to 2009. And just 9 years now, Sri Lanka developed so modern, so developed. In all the Asian countries, I think just Sri Lanka is very modern. Who can provide it? Just 9 years. You just see the bad, and you don't see the Sri Lanka develop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll wrap up now. We've had an extremely stimulating discussion. China-Bangladesh relations prognosis. Jan Zahir, yes?
You wanted some response?
I wanted some response. You are invited, not specifically invited, but should you wish to respond, a very quick response. Yes.
Quick response, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think microphone?
I'm quite loud, I think.
Okay.
Sometimes in such issues, the defense forces get the blame, but defense forces never act on their own. They act on what the state wants them to do. As a student and also a teacher of strategy in National Defense College, I understand that Bangladesh in the past thought that there will be sea change into the attitude of Myanmar when a civilian government comes. And in order to create a space for Bangladesh renewed relationship or new relationship, then Bangladesh stopped even giving minor support to the Rohingya resistance movements, that is to at least get some refuge in our hills. And at that time it seemed to be a very good policy, because it would create an environment when the civil government in Myanmar comes, they will understand that our sacrifices, and then Rohingya should be dealt in a different manner. But that did not happen. In fact, the worst happened. Even this time, this issue was accompanied with ethnic cleansing and genocide, which did not happen before. Yes, Bangladesh had some options to respond. One of them would have been a conventional war, but as we all know, that's very expensive. And a state has to really think a lot before resorting to that path. But I still think that everything is not lost, because there is something called war by indirect approach. And I would say that the option of war by indirect approach has not really gone as yet. And we can give Myanmar some time, really. As I say that we are giving you some time, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. We have waited from 78 up to so many years, maybe 5 years. Thereafter, Bangladesh may think of the option of war by indirect approach, which will be less costly. And I think that will give some, what I would say, bite to Myanmar. And that's why I would like to reassure Professor Afshan Chaudhry that we will not, if state wants defense forces, we will not lie low. They will respond.
Thank you, General Zahir. Well said. Okay. As I said, I had already begun to wrap up. We had a very, very stimulating discussion. We began with China-Bangladesh relations. Of course, while doing it, we focused on China itself. I mean, what China has done to itself is tremendous. I mean, it has lifted 700 million people out of poverty and created a middle class of 250 million. It took them 12 years to double their industrial output per person, compared to 53 years for the United States and 152 years for Britain. And even with 5% growth, I mean, which is half of what China achieved over the last few years ago, with it going forward like that, of course, it's going to become a high-income country within a decade or so. So, with China's rise, problem is, in fact, there was an you're probably aware of Andre Gunder Frank, who said the danger is not the rise of China, but America's reaction to it. You know, in the kind of effect it has on the world, on the global political syndrome. You've heard, and this is something that's talked about very much nowadays, not just Brian Wallace, but a lot of other people have been talking about it. This is what they call the Thucydides syndrome. When one power rises against a risen power, there is a fear of conflict. Thucydides was a Greek historian, and while analyzing the causes of the Peloponnesian War, he had said when Athens grew strong, there was great fear in Sparta. So that is the problem. How to manage the rise of one power and the relationship with one that has risen. So that is something for the bigger actors in the globe, they have to handle that. For us, okay, as we had said earlier, we are now dealing with China on a dollar and cent basis, negotiating project by project. It's very true, Imtiaz talked about the indebtedness to the West. In fact, Western aid in the 50s and 1960s, etc., produced a reaction in particularly among Latin American intellectuals, what they call the dependencia school, the structural dependency. In other words, aid deepens your dependency. So there was a huge leftish philosophy on aid, and we heard of there were Anglo-Saxon books called How the Other Half Dies. In fact, German, I was posted in Germany for some years, and there was a SPD author who wrote about Tödliche Hilfe, which means deadly aid. And so there was already a recognition that aid is not the way to go handle your development issues best. We did well, though. Bangladesh is one of the few countries in the world who actually benefited through aid, and to a certain extent, Pakistan did also. Handling Chinese BRI issues. Shaukat Aziz was Prime Minister of Pakistan. He talks of a repeat of the kind of negotiating techniques you use with the West. That go for approved projects, open it up to international banking system for co-funding. If the international banking system approves of it, you go for it, and you have the intellectual capacity to negotiate with China, and if one gets the better, then it's your fault, and it's not necessarily the other parties. So that is one way to go about it. Now the strategic, Munir raised this point about how to, the strategic elements within the BRI. Now, one of the things, I was in Astana recently, and there's a lot of talk about this. And this point came up, the Chinese strategy of what they call the compass syndrome. I mean, they plan something, they do a lot of homework, they think backwards, they plan something for the future, and then work the details as they approach the plan. In between, other issues come up and all that, these are handled along the way. The Chinese will tell you that there is no such thing as a string of pearls, but maybe there is and maybe there isn't. But common sense would tell you that if you are a major economic power and eventually going to be a major strategic player, you would have to have faith in God, as they say, but keep your powder dry. And that is probably what the Chinese are doing. But again, we have talked of many issues, but one must remember, just because there is a problem does not mean there is a solution. I mean, there are many problems, and we do not have as many solutions as there are problems. This is almost a mathematical way of life. But the idea would be to recognize these problems, perhaps get the low-hanging fruit, resolve those, and aspire an endeavor to reach out for the higher ones and to tackle, if necessary, the problems that those create for you. So, relations with China, okay. I mean, there will be pitfalls along the way. There will be hiccups. There will be problems. Bangladesh and China have this tremendous advantage of having almost an emotionally good relations for starters, and this was a relation dating back to Bengal. I mean, in fact, it came, the relations between Bengal, we heard of the monks going, etc. Old, I mean, Joshi Hard and things like that developed China-Bengal relations. Bangladesh in many ways inherited the values of the presidency. And I think there are great potentials in developing this relationship. And I believe that if we are able to manage this, and management is all, then it will redound to the benefit of not only the both of us, but to the region and to the world. With these words, I'll bring this symposium to a conclusion. By the way, the Greeks made a difference between a seminar and a symposium. A symposium is one in which liquor, alcohol was served. So we shan't be serving alcohol, but we shall certainly provide you lunch, which is a good substitute. So with these words, thank you, Inayat, thank you, Cosmos, thank you all of you for your contribution. Speakers, yes, our time is